because I wish I could have told the author, like, hey, this is amazing. I can't wait for the rest of your trilogy. And she would have been so happy. I mean, she probably would never have seen it, but that's not the point. Hey everyone, it's Jayla, and it's now September as well, so that means that it's time to go through everything that I read in August. This month I read 7 books. Stop. Stop. No, I know. It's not the video. Stop. No. Okay. Just a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I know. It's pretty good. I know. For me, anyway. So yeah, I read 7 books this month. I'm pretty happy with most of them, and I will go through the one that was really disappointing. But yeah, let's get into it. The first 3 books I read this month were the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. I reread these. I haven't read these books since I was like in high school. I think I was a sophomore when I first read these books, so I would say like 2015. No, that's not right. 2013? 2013 or something like that is when I read these books for the first time. And I have to say, they live up to their greatness. They were just as good the second time around as they were the first time. I think I've reread Daughter of Smoke and Bone in the past, and I loved it just as much the second time I read it. So this might be the 3rd time I read this one, maybe the 4th, I don't really know. But as for the other 2, I have never reread them ever. And I had strong feelings about the second one. And the 3rd one, while it wasn't as disappointing for me as the second one, I remember not liking it as much as the first, at least. I'm just going back and forth. So yeah, there has been some growth in this area, because I definitely think that this one is not as bad as I used to think it was. I was just an immature child who needed like romance to fuel her story. And I was really upset because for a lot of this one, there's like a separation between the 2 romantic interests, and it's like, oh my god, I just want them to be together, blah. So yeah, now I can respect this for what it was. I think I gave this one 5 stars, and initially I had given it only 4 stars. And this one, however, we did downgrade a little bit. So for this one, my issue with it was simply that it's introducing new characters and a new plot line. Like, it's a plot line that's been talked about in the previous books a little bit, mostly the second book, but it just was really gone into in this last one. And not only was it gone into more deeply, but it was also not really resolved in a way. It just felt like they introduced this thing and they were like, we don't have time to actually like solve it, so we're just gonna have this very vague ending around it. So yeah, my opinion on this book has only depleted, but I still liked the book. I just didn't like that there's literally a part of the book where it's like, it feels like the end of the book, and then you still have another 100 pages, and you're just like, but why? Because if we didn't have that one plot line, we could be done, and this would be fine. So yeah, that's all to say. Like, I still really, really enjoy this whole series. It's still such a good series, and I would definitely reread them all again, but in some ways we have grown, and in some ways we have learned to be more thorough critiquers, I guess. So definitely High School Me and me now have different opinions, but I still think it is a 5-star series overall. If you've never heard of the Daughter of Smoke and Bone series, I don't know where you've been, but this is one of my favorite fantasies of all time. It's the story of this girl named Karou who's living in this human world, but she's also, like, she's never really felt like she fit into it, and she knows that there's also more than just the human world out there. She was basically raised by monsters, and so she knows that there's this other world, this monster world, but she's always been kind of kept in the dark about this other world and doesn't know anything about it until something happens. I don't know if it will be a spoiler to tell you, but I'm just gonna leave it at that because, yeah. The next thing that I read in August was Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which I loved this book. I even annotated a little bit, which I really don't often do, but I wanted to keep track of all the theories and suspicions that I had while reading this, and so I kept little marks in the book. I didn't do like that many, but I think that's kind of a lot still. Can you see? Can you see? No, you can't. Hi. So anyway, Mexican Gothic is about a girl named Noemi. Noemi? My friend actually made fun of me for saying Noemi wrong because, see, I still feel like I'm saying it wrong. Sorry, Cindy. But we actually had decided to write a book together in high school, and it was not good. But our character's name was Noemi, and so I should know how to say her name already. And I feel like I am saying it right, and I also know a real life Noemi, like I know someone in person, but I still feel like I'm saying it wrong. Noemi? Noemi. Noemi. Let me know if I'm saying that right. It's not Noemi. It's not Naomi. Noemi. Alright, anyway. So it's about this girl named Noemi who's living in Mexico City, and she lives this very, like, glamorous socialite life. And she has a very close cousin who recently got married and moved away to an estate in the Mexican countryside. And that was about a year ago, and she hasn't really heard from her cousin ever since. But then she gets a mysterious letter from her cousin saying that she feels like she's being poisoned and all the people that she's with are evil, referring to the family that she moved in with. And so Noemi has to go and kind of investigate what's going on and make sure her cousin is okay, because this does not sound like her cousin Catalina and she needs to know what's going on. So she goes to the countryside to live with her cousin, and weird, creepy things ensue. I really, really enjoyed this book. I feel like it was very slow in the beginning, and it took me a while to really get into it. But once I got into it, I got into it. I love Noemi as a character. I loved the spooky Gothic atmosphere, and I think it was just done very well. And the explanation and kind of context for everything going on was really interesting as well. And so I will maybe go into more detail in a spoiler-free review. I've seen some people who are interested in it, and so I'm thinking I'm going to post it. I did film one, but I was just like not into it. So maybe I can edit it into something that makes me happy. So I might post a full review for this in, I don't know, hopefully this week, hopefully this month, who knows anymore. The next book that I read in August was Riding the Storm by Brenda Jackson. This is a story in the Westmoreland universe, which is a series following a family of hot men and one sister. I think she also has a book. I have never read an erotic novel, and I wanted to give this a try for the first time, and so I thought that now was the time to do it. So I read this. Yeah, I read it. That's all I have to say about that. I did film a whole vlog with my thoughts and feelings about everything going on, with spoilers and like plot points that I talked about. So if you want to go watch that, I would recommend, because it's a pretty thorough review of the book, I think. I was not a fan, but I know that people did enjoy that video, and I am considering I'm considering reading Stone Cold Surrender, which is the first book in this bind-up, because this is 2 stories, and that one follows a brother named Stone, so who knows, maybe I will, read this. And then in August, I read The Tiger at Midnight by Swati Teerdhala. I hope I said that correctly. But I really, really liked this, Swati. If you're out there and you see this, just know, I appreciate what this did for me. If you'll recall, I've had some trouble with fantasy this year. I actually forgot to say that I feel like Laini Taylor's books really helped me get back into fantasy, because I just have not been into it. I think one of the last fantasy series I read this year was The Diviners, and I finished that in around March, maybe, and just since then I haven't picked up fantasy. I don't know why. The Diviners, it was a great series. I enjoyed it a lot, so it's not that. I'm not bashing that. But I just didn't feel like reading any more fantasy. I was in such a slump. And then I read Laini Taylor's books, and I was cured, so thanks, Laini. But then this is the first fantasy I have read since Daughter of Smoke and Bone, and I'm back. I'm back in the game. I don't know why I love this book so much, but it was just so much fun to read. This is a story about a girl named Esha and a boy named Kunal, and Kunal is a soldier for an enemy army, and Esha is a rebel assassin. And before you roll your eyes and say oh, I've heard of this before, because yeah, you have. But I don't know what it is, but I loved these characters so much. They brought so much personality and so much romantic tension to the story. It was so good. So yeah, I've seen a lot of reviews saying how this book was very much average. It wasn't anything new, and it did the same old stereotypes and tropes over and over again. I don't know about stereotypes necessarily. I do think that it did a lot of the things that YA fantasy is prone to do. So you have the assassin who's so tough and badass, and basically she'll kill anyone without batting an eye, but she's also for some reason not like that in the book, even though that's how she's always described, because she's always talking about how she'll spare this person, she doesn't want to kill anybody, she feels bad about killing. They talk the talk, but they don't walk the walk, and so that was one of the things I noticed about this book. And then we have Kunal, the soldier, who's basically so dutiful and loyal to his nation, but he's also easily influenced into thinking this is not okay, I'm kind of with the bad guys. So Esha's character specifically was something that bothered me without that, just because I was you are literally, you could just kill this guy and this whole story would be over and we wouldn't have to go through all this 484 pages. But I wanted to go through those 484 pages because I love seeing these characters together. This cat and mouse game between them, which is basically the story, is the soldiers trying to catch the assassin. It was so fun to read. I don't know what else to say to you. It was fun. I am desperate for the sequel. As you can see, this is an ARC. I got this in 2018 at Y'all Fest, and I didn't read it then, and I'm really upset that I didn't. The point is that I regret not reading this sooner, but I sometimes just get, like, especially at Y'all Fest, you get so many ARCs, and then you read some of them, and then some of them, like, you just never touch. So I'm really glad I picked this up, but I have to thank Nitty from Nitty Ready Reads. She was hosting an Indian readathon, and since she created that, I wanted to participate. But I also didn't have enough time in the month to just, like, make a whole nother TBR. And so I had tried to find a book that perfectly captured all of the challenges. I think the challenges were a book that takes place in India. This is one that's set in an ancient Indian fantasy world, so I'm counting it. Another one of them was an Indian character on the cover, so even though it's not like distinguishably Indian, that's supposed to be Esha, I believe, so I'm going to count it. By an Indian author. Swati Teerdala is an Indian author, and this one draws from Hindu mythology, so yeah, it fit all of the prompts, and I was like, yeah, I can just read this. So I'm so glad I did. And I successfully completed the Indian readathon, even though, like, I read one book for the Indian readathon. And finally, the last thing that I read in August was Little Fires Everywhere by Celeste Ng. I don't need to tell you anything about this story. Family drama set in a nice little suburban neighborhood. Everything seems normal until it's not, and things come to light. It was really good. I think I gave it 5 stars on Goodreads, but I'm going to give it 4 stars instead, just because I felt like I would need to read it again, honestly, to really think it's a 5-star read. I was reading it physically, but I was also reading it via audiobook, and I know that there were times when I was listening to the audiobook where I kind of checked out for a little bit, not because the story was boring, but just because I was, like, I don't know, playing with my dog outside, or I was, I don't know, doing whatever. I will say that I did really enjoy the story, and I loved what it decided to do. I love the conversation about racism, motherhood, you know, suburban white family drama. It's always crazy. So this is everything that I read in August. Let me know if you've read any of these and what your thoughts are on them. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can also follow me on my Instagram at LalaLovesLit, or you can be my friend on Goodreads. And that's all I have to say, I think. But thank you so much for watching, and have a great September. Goodbye. Goodbye.